Hey guys, Declan here. Just a reminder before we start this episode, we have a Patreon and we have a few cool little tiers you can jump on. And so if you like the podcast, if you'd like to be involved in a little bit of community, there's some Bible studies happening. We have a really cool book club. It's actually so much fun. And then the large tier, there's some discipleship stuff happening as well. But if you want to jump on, click the link in the bios and yeah, it'd be great to see you there. Enjoy the episode. Peace.
Biggest it's ever been. Man, thanks for jumping on, like I said. But 7 a.m. in Kona. You are from Kona, Hawaii. And we were just saying that you also have an Australian passport, which is super cool. But did you grow up in Kona?
No, I didn't. I've been here 13 years, but I grew up in Chicago.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, but I'm definitely
great.
I'm definitely a Howley. I'm not super local Hawaiian.
Yeah. Howley, is that what you said?
Yeah, it's kind of the
What
term for the outsider.
Right. The outsiders looking in.
Yeah.
How did you end up there?
Because of YWAM. So
Cool.
my sister back in 2007, she decided not to go to college, and I thought she was crazy.
Yeah.
And I think I told her at one point, like, man, you're throwing your life away. Because she was super smart. She could have gone to the Ivy League schools and things like that. But she was like, that's not the life that I'm after. And then a couple of years went by. I went to university. I'm glad I did. I like it. But I looked at her life and her friends and the vision and purpose that she had. And I was like, man, you were right. Like, you definitely chose a good path. And she's like, you should come out. And I put her off at first, but then God actually gave me a couple pretty dramatic dreams that were kind of a confirmation that I was headed the right direction after I decided to make the decision to go. So yeah. And then I came to YWAM, and it was everything my sister said, and I loved it so much, so I just stayed.
Oh, that's so cool. And you work for them now?
Yeah. We say volunteer for them. Nobody gets paid in YWAM.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So we're all volunteers. So I try to raise a salary so that I can work here.
Yeah. Nice. And is there like a specific role you have within YWAM?
Well, I mean, my gifts are very much on the creative innovation side. So I work with a couple of people that are really, they have a lot of future vision. And so I will kind of take their ideas. I'll be like, oh man, that is something we definitely need to kind of push the movement forward. And then we'll build and innovate. And so we've seen, our schools, when we first started, I think we were sending, before I got here, they were small, they were 30, but by the time I got here, they were like 80 to 100, but now we're sending 700 a year on mission trips. And, a portion of those go long-term, and that's the goal.
Yeah. I think I've had a few friends that have gone over to actually do it with you guys in Hawaii, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah.
There's a heavy music aspect,
there's
right?
a handful of people from Sydney right now that are part of our crew.
So cool.
Yeah.
Lindy Kofa was part of YWAM,
yeah, still is,
right? Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. How do you know her?
Music, obviously.
Yeah.
But she did a conference for a church I was a part of up on the Gold Coast. And her husband's name is Chase.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. And they were great. Awesome. It's great to meet them, get to know them. It was really cool.
Yeah. They're awesome. Lindy was my sister's roommate.
Cool.
When I first got here.
Yeah. And I've seen some of the stuff I mean, a lot of your stuff on Instagram is amazing. We can touch on that too. But some of the stories you were posting, was it the fire fragrance stuff I think you were posting of those rallies and stuff?
Yeah, that was probably, if that was this last couple weeks, we kind of have two sides to our movement. One is, the real reason we exist is we want to get young people into unreached places, and unreached, they've never heard about Jesus. And then the other half, knowing that most people, that's kind of a rare person that's gonna to move to Nepal or India.
Yeah.
The majority of people legitimately are called by God to go home, and that is just as much of a mission field as going to India or Nepal, and they need to view it like that. And so we do these events around America, Europe. We're trying to do one in Australia as well.
Oh, cool.
And the idea is, how do you look at your community and be somebody that changes it for the gospel? And so we're helping young people start Jesus clubs at their high schools, evangelism nights, Bible studies with their friends, and kind of create a real system to show their generation the love of Jesus.
Yeah, that's so cool. I feel like when I was in youth ministry growing up, there was that whole phrase thrown around that was like future world changers and be a world changer. And
yeah,
I love the aspect of that, right? Like I love the idea that there are people who are going to change the world, like the greater world.
Yeah.
But I feel like I had a wrestle with that terminology. It was like, surely not everyone is going to have this like massive 7 billion world scope. And I feel like God gave me a bit of a revelation one day where he was like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to change the world, but you can be a world changer in your world.
Yeah.
Which is like maybe smaller context in terms of the scope of global, but that's still your world, and it's local church and it's local mission.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, unless you're like the president of the United States or something, you're not really going to do a lot to impact the entire world. And even then, and so the way that I like to think about it, I got this out of a book by a really interesting Indian academic named Vishal Mangawati. And he talks about how to shape the world, how Christians shape civilization. And he kind of said every Christian has three mission fields, or there's three like parts of the Great Commission for every believer. There's your personal sphere of influence. So think about your neighbors, the people that you interact with, daily, those people that are just immediately around you. And, to them, you want the role of hospitality, the role of preaching the gospel, the role of demonstrating the gospel is, how that manifests in that sphere. And then you have your vocation, kind of the thing that how your work is going to impact the world. And so that would be the difference of, just think of a corrupt politician or a corrupt police officer. But you could also go into politics and be a policeman and bring reformation and say, hey, how this corruption, this has got to go. And so you can bring reformation, which is also the gospel, through your vocation. But then every believer also has a responsibility for the ends of the earth. And so some people are actually going to go and they're going to move to Nepal and go reach people up in the mountains. And then some people are going to be involved with missionaries and fund them. And I think that can be, that's not a secondary calling. I think, just like me, I can't do the work that I do unless, I've got like 35 people that support me, and they're just as much invested in the mission as I am. And so their world, it goes from, oh, I'm just, doing my job here in Chicago or Nashville, to all of a sudden they're connected to some big global thing, and they're getting to impact the world and change the world, through that mission. So I think those are the three ways that that's helped me kind of maybe have a more holistic and nuanced view of what it means to fulfill the Great Commission.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, Christ says go into all the nations, right? Which is probably the biggest part of that Great Commission. So however we can partner with that, we're still doing the work, like you said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you grow up in a Christian home? Like, what was your kind of route to Jesus almost?
Yeah. So this grandpa that I was telling you about from Tasmania, he took off when he was 18, traveled around the world with his brother, and he ended up in Chicago for Bible
Mm,
school. And he had seen, on the way to Chicago, he'd gone through India, Calcutta, and those memories like really changed his life and experiences. And so he thought, well, I want to do something about that. And so he started a missions organization that would empower young people to go. And I think in what year was it? I don't remember, around 1960, he took a whole group they took a boat to India. I think it
oh
took him
wow,
6 weeks. Thank,
wow.
thank God for planes.
Yeah, seriously.
And they set up their first team, and then he went back to Chicago and started building other teams. And I think the organization now has around 1,000 missionaries
Oh,
around the
cool.
world. So I grew up with that as my backdrop. And my dad worked at that organization his whole life
Awesome.
until maybe 10 years ago. And then kind of all of us joined YWAM.
Mm,
Uh, we all followed my sister.
yeah,
So,
cool.
yeah.
Um, what was it like growing up with kind of that missional edge to your family?
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because we went to a mega church in Chicago. Uh, and, uh, you know, the mega church had great teaching, but I didn't like their youth group. So I got involved in a youth group that was near my high school. And so, a lot of that was just, I felt very suburban kid.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then, my dad would be taken off to the Middle East, and, we'd be hearing stories about nations, and my dad would come home with knickknacks from around the world. And
Mm,
so there was something seeded in me. And I remember my dad took a trip when he was 18. He went around the world to see it. And so I grew up with that in my imagination. And I was like, I want to do
mm,
that when I'm 18. So I always saved up my money. And then when I was 18, my dad planned a big trip, and we
cool.
did 19 countries, me and my best friend, Trevor. And that was my first real exposure to seeing how, people outside of America, Thailand was the first kind of really exotic nation that I had been to.
Mm,
And, he had some missionary people take us through the red light district to show the ministry that they did there. And then I remember in the Philippines, like going to some of the slum communities that my parents
mm.
worked at when they lived there. I was born in the Philippines. I guess
Yeah,
that's
cool.
another unique
Yeah,
part
yeah.
growing up in a missionary family. But interesting enough, none of us kids actually wanted to do missions when we grew up. I
Right.
wanted to go to med school and be a doctor.
Yeah.
Uh, and just funny enough, I don't know how it happened, but God, when I was in college, God gripped all of our hearts in kind of a unique way and really set us on a path where we were like, we really want to know God. We want more than just what we were given in the mega church, kind of show up on Sunday, get good leadership principles from the Bible.
Mm,
There was this kind of much more charismatic expression of the church that was like really new and exciting. And
mm,
so that kind of captured my attention. And it just happened that YWAM was the place that, there was a bunch of young people burning like that. And
mm.
I was like, I want to be around that. And, my sister was already caught up in that. And then there was the supernatural part of it where it really seemed like God confirmed that this was the right path for me to take through those dreams. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that was kind of how the journey unfolded.
Yeah, yeah. The Philippines is beautiful. I did a missions trip there to some of the slums when I turned to 18, and I reckon it was like something kind of like you said, like that deep seed that's planted in you for the nations in those moments can be so overwhelming, but also so powerful. Gives you
Yeah.
that kind of outside perspective to just like that kind of Western Christianity mega church style, opens your eyes a little bit. It's really good for you as a young kid growing up, turning 18 to kind of a bit of a crazy world tour. What did that do for your faith?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I feel like I came back with a similar type of faith, honestly. Like, I don't know if the experience felt as much spiritual as it did kind of like an adventure and kind of
Yeah.
seeing the world, and it almost felt more like an education. Because we stayed with a bunch of missionaries, but I don't remember being overly impacted by any of them. There's there's a vivid moment of, where were we? It might have been the Philippines or something, but where they prayed before dinner, but they
Right.
all prayed at the same time.
Right.
And I'm maybe they were Korean missionaries or something. I don't know. And I just remember thinking, like, that was crazy. I've never heard anybody pray like that, you
Right.
know. But yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it felt much more like an education of the world. And then it was in college after that where my mom, she started hearing about, I don't know, she started going to more charismatic churches, and there was this idea you could hear God's voice and he still did miracles. And I remember thinking my mom was so crazy at the time, and I was really kind of afraid that she would kind of go off the deep end and believe things that weren't real. And it was the music. That was the thing
Right.
that did it.
Right.
Because part of me wanted to believe what my mom was saying was true, but then I was just scared, I guess, of being crazy. But then I would
Right.
listen to the music that coming out of these churches, and I'd be in my dorm room or driving in the car, and I would just be weeping.
Yeah.
And so, and I, at that point in my life, I did not really cry. My
Yeah.
heart was maybe shut down, or, and so I thought, well, okay, there must be something that's real and of God in this, if this music is hitting my heart so much. And then at some point I kind of opened myself up. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna test the waters. And then I got swept up in it. And I was one of the crazy people.
Yeah. Right. Not a
When I
bad
was
thing
at
to get swept up
university,
in.
I had one good friend that kind of believed that you could hear God's voice, and he still did miracles and things like that. And we would go around and pray for people, and read books and listen to podcasts. But yeah, most of the people, in Campus Crusade or InterVarsity that I interacted with, they were like how I used to be, kind of skeptical of all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, totally. Would you say, like, listening to you say, like, the music was kind of something that broke down those walls for you?
Yeah.
Like, obviously sounds like the power of God, Holy Spirit resting on you in those moments. What did that do for your faith, maybe from more of that like mega church kind of background, which can often at times feel impersonal? Big Sundays, we always say, like, we try and make big church feel small, which is obviously so important. How do those like moments alone, almost in the quiet place, as Jesus so often refers to, where the Holy Spirit kind of rests on you, how does that then shape your faith moving forward? Are those moments kind of more powerful at times than the big corporate body moments for you?
Well, I think the big shifts were, okay, God isn't just a bunch of principles in a book. Like there is a real active relationship that can impact my, like this moment in this day. Like if I pray, it's not just going up to a God that doesn't respond. It's kind of like, oh, I should be expectant that I could hear him and I could pay attention to how his voice manifests and then follow that. And so all of a sudden it was like a one-way street became a back and forth. And then kind of the big thing that was tied up in all that was this idea that I guess in the mega church, it felt like I had to follow all the principles that they were laying out for wisdom and things like that. And if I followed them, then I would have a good relationship with God. And what flipped on its head, and so I guess so that meant reading my Bible, worship, all that kind of things. It was kind of a way to be a good kid, to maybe to earn God's love, or I knew he loved me, but it was like he's proud of me, I guess. And what flipped was, worship, reading the Bible, that is a response to me encountering his love. And so instead of trying to earn it and do all these religious activities to reach God, now it's let me encounter him. Let me realize that he loves me where I'm at right now with a deep, passionate love. And then all the things that I do are in response to that. And I guess it felt, I don't know how it worked, but in those days, it was like the revelation of God's love and how he met me was so electric. And so, I mean, it totally flipped. All of a sudden I wanted to spend hours, I would read the Bible and worship with my guitar. And there were just, I mean, it was, some of the moments they had, it was like my brain was getting rewired. It was so powerful.
Yeah. You move away from like a transactional, I give this and you give that relationship with Christ into this like proper living relationship. Like you said. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I wish, how do we get more? You can't force, this is my tension with like in church life, and you can't force that on people. Like, it, right? Like you sit on the other side of the conversation and you're like, I know God is so real. And those foundational truths, like he loves you so much. Yes. But this relationship, once you enter it properly, and it's that response that you just talked about, like you do these things in response to his love, that you just want to like grab people and shove that down their mouth so that they just get it. But you can't do that. How do you then balance, like even with some of the stuff you do with YWAM, like how do you balance knowing what people need and like not being able to obviously force things upon them, but also gracefully teaching and loving and helping guide them to that place where Christ can meet them?
Yeah. So do you work at a church?
Yeah. So currently I'm a pastor at our church.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know the answer to this, because when I look at my own life, I don't understand why God gripped me and how he did it necessarily. But I think there are some elements where you can kind of posture yourself, I guess, for encounter. So I think, what are all the different elements? I think there was a revelation side of things where there was really good teaching that kind of opened my eyes, because I think I was spiritually dull and I just had a wrong paradigm. And so encountering this new teaching that said, hey, this is possible, kind of was like all of a sudden that was very magnetic. And so there was an element where someone stood up and knew the Bible better than I did, understood it in a deeper way, and said, there is more possible. And then they spoke that. And when he spoke that, it resonated in my heart, really had this electricity in it. And then the next thing was, there was a lot of room for God to encounter people and to respond. And so instead of, and I mean, I understand why church is like this and why YWAM, has, church, you got families, people have schedules, you got to pick up your kids, in YWAM, you can go through a teaching and then you can have a huge response time that is maybe half hour, an hour long, where different people are encountering God, and there's worship. And I think that is a big, if you want to see young people at least transformed and get set apart and electrified with God's love, there has to be that space where the Holy Spirit can work in them. And so, usually what that would look like in YWAM, at least, was there'd be that teaching where people are having those revelation shifts, and then they would go into a worship moment where there's room for God to speak to them personally. And so, then you have your staff going around and praying for people, and whether, God just speaks to them personally in their own mind, or whether somebody feels like, hey, I have a God speaking to me and I'm going to share it with you. But, I can think of so many class times where after the teaching, people's lives got radically transformed because we made space for the Holy Spirit. And then, obviously, to have a place where encounter like that happens, you have to have a core group of staff that really are living with authentic authority. That not that everyone's perfect, but they kind of have to not have hidden lives of sin. Not perfect, but if they do have areas they're struggling with, they're openly struggling with their leaders and saying, I want to turn from this lifestyle. So it's not like a hypocritical environment. There's a real culture of faith and saying, oh, it matters that I go pray for these people because God's power is in the room. And, a certain level of training of, hey, here's how to go and pray and prophesy over people without doing something weird or manipulative, or unbiblical. And then I guess if you read about all the different revivals, it seems like what underpins all of that and what is the precursor of all of that is fervent prayer. And this is where I don't know if it's, God puts his hand on people and they really press in and how they endure. Because the Hebrides revival is one of my favorite examples, because it was these two old grandmas that locked in together. I think they were like either blind or deaf or two, but they just prayed for revival. And so I don't know where they got their fervor for prayer. And they were like, God's calling this guy, Duncan Campbell, like he's going to be here in 2 weeks. And so they invited him. Duncan was like, no, I'm not going to come. And then everything fell apart. And then he came, and then there was this insane outpouring, where I think he preached and nothing much happened. And then right at the end, after he kind of given his speech, one guy responded, and that led to like hours of people getting encountered by God. And then I want to say at like 3 a.m. or something crazy, it was the middle of the night, he was like, okay, I'm going to bed. And as he left the church, a police officer came, and he's like, hey, there's 300 young people that are by the police station. Can you come and preach the gospel to them? And so it's strange because you can have great teaching, you can have great worship, but then I don't know. I've been in some services where it's just like, oh my gosh, God's presence is here. And there's a tenderness, and there's, you're praying for people, and they're getting life-changing revelation. And then, there's definitely church services where you're like, that's nice and that's biblical and everything, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if prayer is, I don't know. I just know that prayer is kind of that foundational building block underneath all of that. And you're just praying for God's Spirit to be poured out in revival. And, I think fasting is also been a major part of all revivals. And that's more about, I think, just becoming tender to God's voice and kind of quieting the flesh more than it is like pulling God's arm and saying like, hey, look at how intensely I want this, because the whole idea is you're not begging God. He wants to do it more than we want him to. He's just looking for somebody that has the faith and dedication to go after it.
Yeah. I think it seems to me, and I don't want to say that I'm just a young punk trying to do my thing, but I don't want to say that the church has like lost that edge of prayer. But it really, a lot of what I listen to is the Awaken Network podcast, which is John Tyson, and Chad Bohai, I think his name is, and they just talk about like this idea of revival and what it means to bring that back and how we can posture ourselves into that place of prayer, like you were saying. And then they just did a few events in Sydney, actually. So my wife and I and some of our guys, we went to the one in Sydney, and they had Zach, what's his name? Zach Krebs, is that how you say it? So he was the in-house chaplain that preached the message at the Asbury revival.
Cool.
That kicked off that whole thing. And I feel like sitting on the other side of the world watching something as crazy as that revival happen, you're like, that is so cool. They must have prepped this. They must be planned here. They must have all this stuff. And then listening to this guy like kind of speak around his story and stuff, like he was just a normal guy. I think he was a soccer coach or something like that, who was working as a chaplain. I think he was not heaps, I'm butchering the story obviously, but he was not heaps like keen. Like he just was like, yeah, cool, I'm going to this, chapel service, I'm going to preach. Didn't feel like the sermon he preached went all that crazy well. And then something clicks, and then he tells the story of like him calling his wife, and he was like, get the kids and get here now. And that then started this like week-long revival of just young people at the altar pouring themselves out. I wonder what would have happened if moments like that in the Hebrides didn't have these like pure, not perfect like you said, but pure, faithful, Christ-like people praying, earnestly seeking God in order that he would then say, I want to pour out what I have for you in this moment here. Like, do you feel like the church, the Big C church, is pulling back to this like prayer at the center of everything movement, at least from what you're seeing, kind of Gen Z, stuff you're doing? Like,
it's hard to speak for the Big C church.
It's so, look, it's so maybe diverse. Don't do that, but
it's definitely, there's something incredible happening among college age students in Gen Z. There's a movement in the United States called Unite, and they're filling arenas on college campuses and seeing thousands of people respond. The circuit riders are going around to universities, hundreds of universities, and seeing baptisms in fountains and lakes, just like Unite. Bible sales. You listen to podcasts and everybody's interested in the Catholic Church all of a sudden. And so I don't know. I mean, it definitely seems like God is orchestrating something pretty big and significant. And I think that's, in the YWAM world, we have this conference called Ascend, and we're really trying to capture that momentum and say, hey, let's do the Great Commission let's take this transformation that you're experiencing and share it with other people. I don't know. I mean, I know, like I did I talked with Tanya Pruitt, who is behind the Unite movement, and that movement was definitely birthed in prayer. You know, she got people together and walked on the campuses, and it was intercession that went before it, and it was God's voice and a very clear kind of following God's prophetic clues, that He laid out for her. So, yeah, I think I don't know the ins and outs of behind all these moves and things like that, but I guess I've when you survey the people that we have sent long term to the nations, and you ask them, why did you go? The main thing is they heard God speak to them personally, and usually a lot of times that was in a prayer set. We do prayer sets every morning, and we'll often focus on a nation or a region, and it's just those moments where you're kind of before God's presence intentionally, and He puts that seed in you, and it's maybe a new emotion, like the first time you've cried for a nation, or the first time, and I don't know, I'm sure you've experienced, it's like I didn't care about this before, I wasn't that passionate, in general. I thought, yeah, somebody should bring the gospel to Tajikistan, but I don't know, it's a lot. But then all of a sudden I'm in a prayer set and I'm weeping over that nation, and then all of a sudden I have this real excitement in me, and I don't know in God's economy how He's figuring out where to plant the seeds, but I think there's very clearly God has a unique, specific calling for every individual. And I think if you get in God's presence and you're paying attention, those burning bush moments you can find them, and it will send you on the craziest adventure if you kind of pursue it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, you said that, like, the podcast about the Catholic, everyone's interested in the Catholic Church, which I've gone down the rabbit hole, man. And I think they, like, what our brothers and sisters in the Catholic Church, like, what a beautiful thing to glean from. But the stats are like young people are turning to like the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church in like massive, massive numbers currently, hungry for truth, searching for truth, like in a way that I don't think, maybe me personally, I've seen many other generations kind of thriving for, or like really, really hungry for that truth. It definitely is a gift that that generation has, is like seeking truth above all else. And, like, luckily we know that Jesus is the truth. So they're going to find the right thing if they have that open heart and posture towards that. But what's like your experience currently working heavily with that generation and seeing that like hunger and thirst for the truth of the gospel, and then seeing young people encounter that?
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, it seems very similar to 10 years ago. When I'm in classrooms and looking and watching young people get gripped, and in the prayer sets, it's that same thing where some shift happens in their life, and all of a sudden, they're like, I'm taking this seriously. Like, I'm gonna, I had one of the guys, one of our staff in my house, he just did a 21-day fast. That's just because it's like kind of our school. It starts in the fall, and so all our staff are in training, and so they challenge. They're like, guys, we need to pray and fast, and it wasn't necessarily supposed to be like a water fast for 21 days. You could do a Daniel fast. You could, everyone did it different, but he's hungry, and he's like, I'm gonna go for it. Like, I want to, really, like, I don't know. I want to do something like to really seek God and to really hear and direct my life. And so I'm seeing that that same level of hunger. And I think when you have all that zeal and excitement, then it's really important what you put in front of them, and how you frame, hey, this is a good goal, and this is a God dream to put in front of you, because they will enthusiastically run after it and give their life for it. And so you want to make sure you're pointing them in a healthy direction. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've read a ton of research about how Gen Z is different, and I definitely can see, some of the trends where, they really want to do things with their leaders, kind of alongside with, and the mentorship and community is really important. But when it comes to the spiritual hunger and prayer, it seems like the same way the millennial generation got gripped and said, like, I want to seek God. I'm seeing that same thing, in our young people as well.
Yeah. You touched on it before, like the teaching aspect of it. And I guess maybe it leans more to the like equipping of the saints aspect,
Yeah.
which is like, really good teaching. Like, well, we obviously need to teach people proper stuff to not lead them astray, but like really good teaching then leads to revelation for people, which can often posture people's hearts for that real encounter with the living Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
For you, like, you obviously have a great gift of teaching, and your online presence, and it leans very heavy towards explaining kind of bigger ideas or people's theological thoughts in a real palatable way. At least that's how I kind of stumbled across you on Instagram, was like looking at you kind of explain, the John Mark Comas and like the way that they think and pull things apart. How do you then approach that for Gen Z now? How did you fall into that, on social media? Like, you've obviously got a smaller, larger than a me, but a pretty good following going around. Like, how did you fall into that teaching side of things? And then how are you then seeing that play out for the people and the audiences that you're reaching?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I work with a guy named Andy Bird, who might be one of our generation's greatest communicators. So I always feel like I always kind of compare myself to him. I'm like, man, if you want a room to be led into revelation and encounter, you don't really want me up there. You want Andy,
Right.
Because the way that he can lead people into inspiration is remarkable. And I feel like and I don't know if that qualifies as maybe more of a preacher and I'm more of a teacher, but I think my gift is much more practical and kind of the nuts and bolts. Like, if I can do a really good job if you want to really get in depth on what a biblical worldview is, or how do you share the gospel with someone, and it's a little bit more nuanced, and I feel like that I'm great at that, and I can make that fun and interesting. But as far as like, if you put me in a room and you're like, they just need to know about the love of God and have it change their life, that would make me feel really insecure, because I would just think about Andy.
Right.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it like him, and and so I in YWAM, I help run our schools and everything, and so for our teaching weeks, we would bring in people like Andy, or I'm trying to think if we ever had John Tyson out. I think he's been to Kona once, but we would have these incredible speakers to come and teach. And then kind of the more practical side of things, that's where the school leaders would come in and teach. And, we would have things like, this is how you share the gospel, and this is how you connect with people cross-culturally. And so I became like, that became my tool belt, where I became really good at teaching some of those kind of things. And then social media came in, just because I thought, man, I'm telling all of our staff how they need to be a witness online, because all the other worldviews are being very bold, and they're telling you how to find purpose and fix their
Mm-hmm.
anxiety with crystals and manifesting their
Yeah.
destiny like that. I
Yeah.
thought, well, if we don't show up and if we don't participate in that conversation, we don't have any hope. And so one day I thought, I've told enough other people to do it. I need to do it myself.
Yeah. Right.
And so I had a friend, Chloe Mack, who was doing influencer stuff, and
Mm.
I talked to her and I was like, okay, I can do this. And so then I just kind of made a commitment and went for it for a year. And yeah, so I think, if you want to go after the teaching side of things, I think there's nothing like putting an Andy on stage. And so I think if you can figure out who the best teacher that you have, and this is interesting, because somehow you can be very charismatic on stage, and Andy is, but he's also very aligned with God and with truth. Like there isn't some disconnect between his personal integrity or the things he's preaching and really what. So it feels like you need to find somebody that's the real deal. But if you can find somebody that's the real deal and has that gift of like preaching and inspire, you got to get them on stage, no matter how young they are, or old or outside, like put that guy on stage and let him capture people's attention. And so I think, getting everybody in the right seat, because I think if I try to do what Andy does, it's a big miss. And then if Andy tries to do what I do, it's a big miss.
Yeah.
And so you got to get everybody in the right seat. And yeah. And so I think that's probably some of the important things if you're trying to get young people gripped for God's love or encounter.
Yeah. We definitely all have that kind of grace for a specific gift on our lives. Like our senior pastor James, like he's a fantastic communicator, and I can't do it like he does. There's no way. But again, maybe I'm a bit more similar to you, like in that teaching aspect. Like if I stay in that lane where I'm feeling really good, like I'm good. But if I try and start comparing and doing it his way, like it's crumble, it's burn city. That's not going to end well at all. So finding people and what their gifts are, and then elevating them to empower them to use those gifts, man, that's like secret gold. For you, what do you think has been the hardest part of your faith up until kind of this point? Maybe, take some liberty with that, but, maybe one of the biggest things you've wrestled with, or, maybe it's a hard season, I don't know, but like that real grind for you, which, well, yeah, I'll just let you answer.
Yeah. I would probably put it in two different categories. The first would be probably insecurity and comparison. So I think when you have such a strong leader like Andy that you're working for, I think it took a lot of effort to kind of say, hey, I'm not supposed to be Andy. My community doesn't need another Andy. They need what I have. And taking risks to enter into, to use to take myself seriously and use my gifts to really lead, that's tough. That's tough to do. And I think social media was really helpful for that, because I think, just insecurities you have about your skill set, your appearance, all those things, you kind of have to say, hey, that's not as important as the mission. And there's real need out there. And I just need to say, yes, I don't have time to be insecure. And, saying yes to the social media thing and going for it, there's a vulnerability in that where you just kind of have to go for it. So that was one battle. And then I think I definitely can be more of a cynical person. And I can get in kind of observer mode where, let's say like I show up to a worship set or something, I'm analyzing how the band is doing, what are the lights and the backgrounds, and is this moment real or manufactured, things like that. And I can be in that observer mode, which takes me out of it. And so I think fighting cynicism and just trying to be authentic and tender in the moment is a real battle, because life has a lot of ups and downs, and there's a lot of disappointments, and there's a lot of things, and like over the past couple of years, there were tons of church leaders that came out with scandals and things like that. And so, it's easy to go to that cynical place, but fighting that and saying, I believe that God is good and real, and this isn't just some manufactured system or power manipulation game, and the church is not just a business trying to make money. And you can see all these cynical lies that you want that are trying to attach to you. And so I think fighting that and staying authentic and tender has been a real challenge through the disappointments, and how when things don't work out the way that I thought they would, or you're dealing with the consequences of the path, saying yes to the path that God has put before you, and you're like, man, I didn't realize these sacrifices would be part of it. And just staying in that place of faith it's a challenge. And
it's tough.
There's plenty of days where I'm like, I was probably more cynical than I was faith-filled, but not letting that take me out in the long run, and not letting that become the theme of my life is a battle that I fight.
Yeah, I definitely lean much more towards that cynicism side as well, and that over-analyzing. And how do you even fight that internally? Because that's such a tough look. I think it can be a gift. I saw a study actually once that said, okay, maybe not cynicism is a gift necessarily, but I saw a study that said cynical people are more often right, but they get physically sick much more than optimistic people, which is quite telling. But how do you challenge those thoughts and fight those thoughts at an internal level?
Yeah, well, I think in a few different ways. One, there's a certain sense of, okay, the world, like God created the world to support people that have faith rather than cynicism. I think that, and so just knowing that, like, okay, if I will find what I search for. And so if I'm being cynical and have that perception, I'm going to find all the things to validate my cynicism.
Right.
But if I'm hopeful and optimistic, God literally built the world to support people that choose to see the possibility and the faith of what could happen. And so I think that revelation helps. But then on a more practical level, I think of my friend Taylor, and I can be cynical about something, and I just talk to him, and he'll give me a different perspective on it. And I've found myself a lot of times being cynical, maybe for example, it's easy to go to a mega church and kind of be cynical about the service and all that kind of stuff. And then he'll just bring that other perspective of, man, these guys are absolutely crushing it. And you need mega churches in the body of Christ, and, what they can accomplish with their systems and what they safeguard is so important. And then all of a sudden you just have this shift, and you're like, oh yeah, this isn't a big system. These are people, and they're flawed, but so is YWAM, so am I. And there's plenty of problems, probably more problems in YWAM.
Yeah, seriously.
And so having some friends that aren't cynical or more positive, that you can maybe confess, you're like, hey, I'm looking at this all bitter and cynical, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I just feel sour inside. Can you, like, what's
yeah,
another perspective? That's been
yeah,
helpful.
yeah, yeah. And then letting them challenge you on that and being receptive to it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really good. Yeah, yeah, that's cool, man. I won't keep you too long, but thanks so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it, and
Yeah, Declan. Thanks for
good to get to chat. And do you want to just pray for us as we finish up? And
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. God, uh, I know that there's people listening that are burning to see revival and to see people encounter you in powerful, life-changing ways. And I want to ask that you would give them confidence in their spiritual leadership, and
mm,
that you would push them to action, that you put an idea in their mind right now about what step that they can take to call a prayer meeting or go preach the gospel that would push their story forward, and that you would use them to impact the world and change
mm.
people's lives.
Amen. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.